Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, guys. And, of course, their pregame show live, 10 o'clock, to get you ready for the Eagles and Niners on YouTube. Geoff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, Andrew DeCecco, they are Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Today it's Geoff Mosher powered by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience now at Caesars.com. The Eagles with the big win over the Falcons, and now they turn their attention ahead to the San Francisco 49ers. Geoff Mosher, what's up, my man?
Michael, how are you?
I'm doing well. I like the matchup this week. Very intriguing. A team the Eagles beat last year, by the way. One of their 4 wins came in San Francisco. But both of these teams, Jeffrey, are much different than the ones that met last year in San Jose.
Yeah, they are. Obviously, the Eagles have a completely different roster. Not completely, but a lot of, obviously a different coaching staff, different quarterback. A lot of different players at certain positions, different scheme. I think that's the biggest thing that's different on the Eagles side too, as they go into San Francisco. And what makes it difficult for the 49ers is, and they're on a new defensive coordinator in D'Amico Ryans, a very familiar name for Eagles fans, but he is, under that Robert Saleh tree. He gets promoted to defensive coordinator. So they do a lot of the similar things, but he doesn't really know, other than what he saw on Sunday, what Nick Sirianni's offensive philosophy is like. He has one game of tape on it to prepare for, as opposed to, say, last year when he and Robert Saleh were putting the game together, the game plan for, say, Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz. So now there's a little bit more of a guessing game on their side about what the Eagles are going to do offensively.
Yeah, obviously in that both these teams had high expectations last year, and both these teams had a lot of injuries. San Francisco, Geoff, I think was hurt more than any other team in NFL history. I think they lost more guys than anybody, but they've already starting to get the injury bug. They lost Mostert, they lost Verrett on the defensive side of the ball. So how do you think those two injuries might play into this game? Big factors, not factors?
No, I definitely think it's a factor, and it's an area that the Eagles are going to have to look at to try to attack, maybe even more so this coming week than last week when they were content to take what the defense gives and be able to move the ball more laterally and horizontally than vertically. But the 49ers did not have a good cornerback situation to begin with. Jason Verrett's a good one, but he's been hurt a lot in his career, and he just got hurt. As you mentioned, he's out for the year. They had to bring in Dre Kirkpatrick, a veteran who's a pretty good, decent corner. But he was literally just signed by them, I think, yesterday. They had worked him out earlier and opted not to sign him. But it's not a position of great strength for them as opposed to some of the other areas on that team. And with the Eagles and their offensive line being able to block and be healthy, this is a game where I would suspect you would want to see Jalen Hurts look to drive the ball a little bit more when given the opportunity. I also think they're going to have to do that to score points. This is an offense in San Francisco has that I believe will match up fairly well against the Eagles defense, and I would expect them to score more points than Atlanta did.
Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast, it dropped this morning. I want to kind of get some breakdown from you on the offensive line. The Eagles' offensive line, I thought, won them that game. I thought they were that dominant. It allowed their offense to do basically what they wanted to do. Not a lot of pressure on Hurts. It allowed them to run the ball. It allowed them to move the chains. Looking back at the offensive line, that offensive line review, how dominant and who stood out?
It was a very dominant performance, one you would expect of an offensive line that has really good players on it. Jordan Mailata obviously came under the microscope, not only as a starting left tackle, but also as someone who just got a huge contract a few days earlier. And I know that Adam Kaplan said on the podcast that dropped this morning that some of the personnel sources that he talked to who grade the tape, and these are people from other teams like advanced scouts, so there's really no agenda, no bias, just what they see on the tape. They thought it was one of the Mailata's best performances in pass protection from start to finish that he's had. So clearly Jordan Mailata, we know the arrow has been trending up. We know they gave him the money at a time where it was a little bit risky, but the upside seemed to to make it worthwhile. And for him to come out first game on the road, I don't think he was one of the guys that had a penalty, which is another good sign. Just that's what you need. That's what they're hoping for. Each game, he continues to learn and understand his technique. I tell you, there are things that I just noticed on tape myself that where he's starting to learn and understand how to use his body, Mike. But he's such a big dude. I mean, everybody obviously saw the block that he put on the safety Richie Grant on the Jalen Reagor touchdown. But there were some sets where I noticed where he may have, kind of set back a little bit to overset to the point where you're getting a little bit too close to the quarterback. But while that invited the defensive end into him, he was able to anchor and then just stonewall that guy at the mark. So he's really starting to understand how to use the feet, the hands together, and just use all that weight and massive body that he has to his advantage.
I saw also Pro Football Focus take it for what it's worth that Isaac Seumalo was one of the best pass blocking players on the offensive line, guard, tackle, or center. I mean, if you get him going, he is kind of the thought to be the weak spot in the offensive line.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. He is thought to be the weak spot, but only because all the other four have all either made an All-Pro or a Pro Bowl team or both. So he's not a weak player. He's pretty good. He's the type of guy, right? If he became a free agent, I mean, we saw Big V get like $50 million from the Lions a couple of years ago to play right tackle. And Big V was good sometimes and not so good. He was a very inconsistent player, where Sam Howell tends to be more consistent. He's not great, but he's good enough. If he ever hit free agency, he would obviously command a lot of money. So he's a pretty good player. He did have a good game, but I like the way you said, take it for what it's worth, because as we saw, the Falcons really only have one good pass rusher. That's Grady Jarrett. And after that, it's a whole different story this week with the 49ers when you've got Javon Kinlaw and Eric Armstead and obviously Nick Bosa on the edges. This will be a little bit better of a litmus test for how good this offensive line can be.
Hey, did you get a chance to kind of break down when they ran the ball? Did they run the ball more to their veteran right side? Did they go behind Mailata? Is he a guy that they feel comfortable running behind, or were they more running towards the right side with Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks?
Yeah, it did feel like, just watching the tape that is available, which is a sore spot. I'm sure you've heard people complain. The All-22 is not out yet, and nobody knows when it's going to come out. And not only that, but even rewatching Game Pass right now is not as good as it used to be a year or two ago when you can just go to separate plays. But I digress. Anyway, it did seem like most of the action was toward the right side. I don't know. That could be situational depending on where the ball was spotted and the hashes and everything, or just the fact that you've got Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks there. That's great, too. Or whether obviously they came out with 3 straight RPO throws to Quez Watkins on the right side. And, when I watched that, I thought, they're doing RPOs here. And the reason why they're doing it over and over and over is because Atlanta is showing literally the exact same defensive front every single time. So why wouldn't you do that? And, of course, Miles Sanders caught that nice screen that set up Kenny Gainwell's touchdown to the right side as well. So I think it just so happened to be some of their flashy and big gain plays came from the right side. But I don't know if that's a tendency that the coaching staff was trying to exploit or just more taking what the defense was giving.
Well, we know this week Bosa, Armstead, they're going to have a much different level of competition. Mailata, I think a lot of people are looking at him because of that contract, and he's the one new guy, and now he'll have Bosa lined up over top of him. That's going to be probably a matchup to watch.
Absolutely. The big thing with Jordan Mailata now, you're the starting left tackle. You've got the contract. Last year, anything Jordan Mailata did positive was gravy, right? I mean, he's replacing Jason Peters. The pressure is off. People have no idea what to expect. They know he's huge, but they also know he's a project. And so he had some really good games early on and in comparison, and there was a lot of hype and buzz. But then, if you remember, a couple of games into it, he started to kind of regress to the mean. He had some rough games there against, I want to say, the Giants and maybe Washington, where, there were some bumpy parts to his game that you would expect. But now it seems like the hype is all the way back up when you win the job and you get the money. You're expected every week here to go up against a really good pass rusher because every team's got at least one, and they're usually on the edges.
Yeah,
Jeff Mosher is going to be under the microscope.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, they looked a lot closer at the offensive line play, and that's going to be a big factor in this game because Atlanta's defensive front not nearly as talented as the front they will see from San Francisco. I think another one is last year in the game, Kittle had 15 catches on 15 targets for about 190 yards, and I don't know that I feel any better about them defending him this year.
It's funny because Adam and I have been calling him. That's our nickname for him, 15 for 15. That's what we just call him. I mean, think about that. Have you ever seen a game where anybody, forget tight end, a wide receiver, have you ever seen a game where somebody was targeted 15 times and caught all 15 passes? I think it was a record when he did it. So, yeah, look, the one thing you can say, though, about the Eagles this year, at least based off Sunday's game against Atlanta, and then what we know, it appears they're going to be a lot more zone-oriented than man-oriented. So last year, George Kittle, he lines up and he's looking at, Alex Singleton. He's looking at Nate Gary. He's looking at guys he can beat one-on-one in coverage as long as the quarterback has time. And, of course, you have the gift of Kyle Shanahan's schemes, which have a lot of motion and misdirection. But with the amount of zone they're going to play, Mike, now, I don't know that you're going to see him targeted 15 times. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get the ball to him in those situations, but obviously it's a give and take. Stopping the run now is going to have to be the key for this defense because they're going to be in that zone and they're going to play a lot of safety deep, and that means they're going to have to do a better job up front of stopping the run game.
Yeah. McLeod, I would imagine, not going to play this week?
Yeah, I know today they reconvened. I'm waiting for the injury report to come out to see what they officially list on him, but I would think not yet.
How did the safety play go without him out there then? I mean, I know Epps got hurt, so you saw a lot of Kayvon Wallace. Did the Eagles like what they saw from their second-year safety?
I would think that they did. I mean, it's a little bit of a hard judge because every time Matt Ryan dropped back to pass, especially after the Eagles went up 15-6, it felt like he had a defensive tackle in his lap. So I don't know if the safeties had to work very hard in coverage. But what I like about this defense so far, from safety to corner, areas where the Eagles have struggled in the past, because they're playing zone, because you're seeing more two-shell coverages, Mike, it appears that Jonathan Gannon is just putting these guys in a position where you don't have to guard a guy, you have to guard an area. And as long as you can understand what your zone is, what your area within the zone is, we're going to be all right as long as we're getting our front four pressure. So, when you have to play as man, as much as they've done under Jim Schwartz, you get a little nervous about some of these matchups. When you're playing zone, not much nervous about individual matchups, more as collectively, can we stop the run and can we get to the quarterback enough so that the quarterback can't pick apart our zones.
Yeah, I think the Kittle thing will be interesting because that gets the safety involved, it gets the linebackers involved, probably the two areas where they're the weakest. Deebo Samuel had a big game for them. I feel a little bit better. He had a big game for them in week 1, I should say. He didn't do much against them last year. But Darius Slay, Steven Nelson, these two guys, I feel like I feel much better entering games with wide receivers this year, essentially, than I felt in any game last year.
Yeah, I think, you have better personnel with Steven Nelson as opposed to a Michael Jacquette or Avonte Maddox on the outside. B, you've got 2 safety coverages, so these guys get a little bit more protection than they have in the past. And then C, by the nature of playing zone and not having to match up individually, there's a little bit of a break there. I'll be curious to see Steven Nelson on Sunday. He's a tough, scrappy corner, physical corner. Book on him is that he struggles with speed receivers, and both Ayuk and Deebo Samuel have a nice little explosive element to their game. So, again, that's why the front four rush or whatever Jonathan Gannon does to create pressure will be very important. Yep. But if Jimmy Garoppolo has a lot of time, that's not going to be a good – I would expect, if he has time, maybe about 7 or 8 targets to Steven Nelson's direction.
Hey, Moshe, obviously the run game this week's going to be – Mostert's out. They went with Elijah what the heck was the guy's name that came in?
Mitchell.
Elijah Mitchell. Man, I forgot his name already. Elijah Mitchell.
How can you forget him? How can you forget Elijah Mitchell?
I don't know, man. I got a lot of names right on through my head on any given day. Elijah Mitchell just not at the top of my name chart right now.
No,
but
nobody knew who he was 5 days ago. It's all right.
he had over 100 yards in the game. And this is where last week, early in the game, a lot of yards on the ground, preseason. We talked about it on Monday, a lot of yards on the ground. What did you see about the scheme change, or if they did anything that would change that this week with this kid Mitchell, who, is an explosive player from what we saw?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you and I are going to be like 80 years old someday and watching NFL games, and Kyle Shanahan's kid is going to be directing an offense in the NFL, and he's going to be taking guys off the street and turning them into 100-yard rushers. I mean, this is, Mike Shanahan did it, Kyle Shanahan does it, and then I'm sure the next Shanahan child will be doing the same thing. It's really, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Elijah Mitchell, but we see it. It's the scheme. It's what they do with the motion, the misdirection, the eye candy, the spread that they bring in, the West Coast concepts that create big gaps for running backs to be able to take advantage of. And it totally wouldn't surprise me at all, Mike, if now that everybody's talking about Elijah Mitchell, if Kyle Shanahan made Trey Sermon active and gave him the ball 25 times, just out of the element of surprise for the Eagles who hadn't, or anybody who hasn't yet seen him because he was inactive week 1. Yeah. So it's not about Elijah Mitchell. It's about the running game. It's about what they want to do to disguise what they are going to do.
So much hype this week around. I feel like I turned around, our studio set up, the TV's over my shoulder. I feel that every time I turned over, Sal Paolantonio was on TV from NovaCare Complex. They're talking about Jalen Hurts. His jersey sales, 500% increase for Jalen Hurts. The ticket sales, the price increased by 50% on tickets. How does Nick Sirianni, a young first-time coach, keep the excitement level down and focus on a good 49ers team?
That's a great question. By the way, I saw Sal Pal today when I was down at the NovaCare. Looking good as always, as he does. I would say this. I don't know that it's Nick Sirianni who tempers everybody's enthusiasm, because he's kind of an enthusiastic guy. If anything, he's probably the Pied Piper of, hey, let's all enjoy what we've got here. But, I was there for Jalen Hurts' press conference, and and as I have been since going back to last year, I was impressed with his ability to just move on, process, diagnose, and then discard. Like he was asked about the jersey sales. He said his answer was pretty cool. He was like, look, that's great. I'm glad kids are buying my jersey. I want to continue to give them a reason to do that and be happy about it. And that was about it. Like, he's not a very expansive guy in his press conferences, and he's not a guy who appears to get very high about doing well or low about doing poorly. So I think he's got the right demeanor so far. I mean, we know that as games go by and you get to learn more about people and you'll see different patterns develop. But so far, he seems to have the perfect mentality to just allow all this hype to build without really affecting his mindset.
All right, Geoff Mosher, I have the injury report here.
Oh, yeah.
Brandon Brooks did not practice knee/rest, so that, I guess, feels pretty good there. Marcus Epps, DNP. Zach Ertz, Ryan Kerrigan, personal matter. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. They are all your DNPs. LPs, Fletcher, Brandon, Lane, Jason, Darius, all rest. Miles Sanders, rest. Landon Dickerson, knee. Calf Taylor, McLeod, knee. So essentially it's the same three guys as last week, and everybody else is resting.
Yes, everything. I would say so. I guess rest is now considered an injury. You're on the injury report with rest.
Right. We are making sure we cross all the T's, dot all the I's. If you are taking the day off, we need to put you on the list.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty interesting here. It says Davion Taylor is a full participant, though. I can't remember if he was limited or full at the end of last week.
Landon Dickerson, too. Full participant. Davion Taylor, full.
Yep. Wow, that's really good for the Eagles. Good for both of those guys.
Apparently, Dickerson, Moshe, was in on the field goal team.
Yeah, I did see that. He was in on the field goal team. Now, here's an opportunity to get him on the field if he's ready to go and medically cleared as a sixth offensive lineman, maybe in goal line packages, maybe in short yardage, maybe in the middle of the field on 2nd and 3, and you're acting like you want to pick up 3 yards on a run and you spring a play action out there. So I've always had the sense, Mike, not reporting this, just always had the sense that when he was ready to go, that they're going to try to get him on the field in some form or fashion. And so here we go. We'll see if he makes it on the field on Sunday in some way.
This will be interesting, too. If Seumalo ends up having some great year, where he's constantly rated as one of the best guy, yada, 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 that's the spot that everybody anticipates. I guess Kelsey, if he hangs him up, then he goes to maybe play center. But, that would be an interesting story. If Seumalo plays so well that spot's not really up for grabs, how do you find a spot to get him on the field? Well, I guess there's some other aging players on this team, Brooks and Johnson. But Kelsey, I guess, is coming to the end. I know that you and Kaplan talk about this almost every year. If he feels like playing, we'll find out.
Exactly. I mean, there's optionality here. Seumalo could have a really good year. Jason Kelsey may want to retire or who knows with the contract situation. You may move Seumalo to center and play Dickerson at left guard. You may just love having Dickerson play center and think that he's the heir apparent. They've got a lot of different – Brandon Brooks, obviously his injury status as we get into the year and whether or not he's still playing at a high level will also come into question because as I suggested many months ago and he confirmed a couple of months ago that he was on the trading block if somebody wanted to, go up good value for him. So we'll have to see. And this is all stuff for down the road. I'm just, obviously we're just interested in seeing if they can get Landon Dickerson on the field this year in some kind of way.
All right, Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast. Check that out. It dropped this morning. Also, Q&A is moving to when?
So it was originally going to be moved to today, Tuesday. Then we decided to move it to Thursday because we wanted to give those guys an opportunity to watch the tape and break it down and give analysis. But now that all 22 seems to not be coming out anytime soon, I don't know what we're going to do. So they're going to be Thursday this week, and then maybe we'll change it again next week.
All right. Well, follow them at Inside Birds on Twitter to get all the latest information on when that because it's a great show between Jason Avant, Quentin Michael, and then the pregame show on Sundays on YouTube from Inside the Birds. Tomorrow, Andrew DeCecco and Adam are flip-flopping this week. So Adam will be on Friday. Andrew will be on Thursday. That's Geoff Mosher right there. All right, Moshe. Appreciate it, pal.
Take care, brother.
All right. The Inside the Birds podcast is out today. It's a really good one. They break down the offensive line. They go a lot deeper on the video and all that kind of good stuff here on Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. It's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long at the Wild Wild West Tropicana Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience at Caesars.com.